You're listening to the Full-Time Function Musician Podcast, episode 14.
You're listening to the Full-Time Function Musician Podcast, the number one resource for growing your function musician business. If you're a solo wedding singer, part of a 12-piece luxury show band, or anything in between, and want to learn from other successful musicians, you're in the right place.
You're listening to the Full-Time Function Musician Podcast. I am your host, Jack Twiner. If this is your first time listening, then welcome. If you're a regular listener, then welcome back. This podcast is for function musicians who are looking to grow their business, book more gigs, hear some inspiring stories, and generally just learn from others who've been doing it successfully for years. I've got such a good episode for you today. Actually, one of my favorites so far. This episode is packed with so much information about personal growth and setting goals. I'm actually not even going to waste your time talking here anymore. I'm going to get straight into it. So here we go. I hope you enjoy my conversation with John Blackburn. You're listening to the Full-Time Function Musician Podcast, and on today's episode, I'm joined by John Blackburn. John is a coach in the UK specialising in work with live entertainment producers. He helps clients get better quality, better paid work so that they can be financially secure, creatively fulfilled, and have certainty about their future. He also works within live entertainment as a drummer and a musical director, playing in theatres all over the UK every week in a variety of touring shows. Although he has a keen interest in personal development inspired by his drum teacher as a teen, it was his experience as a professional musician that brought him to study NLP and coaching itself, resulting in his current work. John is a licensed NLP master practitioner and holds an accredited diploma in coach training. He also really loves pizza and a morning mocha. John, welcome to the podcast, man.
Hey, Jack. It's great to be here. Thank you.
First question, NLP, what does that mean?
Oh, great. NLP is neuro-linguistic programming, and I'll give you the brief potted sort of history. Different people will describe it in different ways. So the first thing I'd say is there's a difference between what people inside of NLP think NLP is and what people who have maybe just heard of it or read a book or something or seen a video on YouTube think. So typically, people who have just maybe seen a video or read a book or something, they think that NLP is a sort of catalogue of little techniques or kind of tools and tricks and things you can do to motivate yourself or to cheer yourself up or to stuff like that, you know. Now, what NLP is from the standpoint of people that have maybe studied it in a bit more depth is it's a series of models, and the main model in NLP is a model of how to, if you like, model other people. It's a sort of meta model. And what that means is, just to take it out of the airy-fairy words for a minute, is it means that we have a few different ways of asking someone questions to give us very specific information about how they do things in their brain. And then once you understand how someone does something internally to produce a particular result, you can then sort of adjust and tweak very specific bits of those processes so that that person can get a different result or can get more of the result they're already getting. So let me give you an example. It's probably not that common amongst people listening to this podcast, but people listening to this podcast might remember musician friends of theirs who, for example, got stage fright. So one thing that you could do with NLP is you could ask that person a series of questions about how they generate the result, stage fright. And obviously straight away, most people are going, well, what do you mean? Because stage fright is just a thing that happens. And it's like, yes, consciously, we're not aware of the little steps we go through to make ourselves nervous. They are, by definition, unconscious. They're outside of our awareness. But I can ask you certain questions that will bring the process that you go through to generate that result to light. And the funny thing is, as soon as I start asking someone questions about that process, they can tell me the answer straight away. You know? So there's obviously something that they're reaching for. And one thing is that as soon as you bring an unconscious process to light, to the conscious mind, to your awareness, even just doing that sometimes can have a quite radical effect on your experience, you know? If, for example, with our made up stage fright friend.
Oh, you can call that person me, because I suffered with stage fright, and that was why I never pursued my career as a musician.
Oh, Jack. Oh, that might be a conversation for another day, man.
Yeah, I think so.
We should have done that conversation before the podcast. So, okay, well, I'm going to stick with the imaginary person because I don't want it to get too personal, Jack. But this imaginary person, you ask them some questions, for example, well, what kinds of things do you hear in your head when you've got stage fright? And they'll go, well, I don't really. And then you go, oh, okay, but if you did have something in your head, what would it be? And they'll straight away say, oh, well, I remember my first drum teacher telling me that I was terrible. Oh, right. So you did have something in your head, you know? It just wasn't, you weren't consciously aware of it. And of course, they keep repeating this negative phrase over and over to themselves, and then they feel worse and worse. So they think of more examples of times when they've been terrible, and they keep thinking about those examples, so they feel worse and worse. And unsurprisingly, having done that for 5 or 10 minutes before they walk on stage, they feel awful. Now, what you could do is, you could take, for example, you could take that process of repeating phrases over and over in your head with a particular tone of voice, etc., and instead of repeating the horrible negative ones, what if you were to remember a time when someone said something to you, or you said something to yourself, that actually helped you feel really good? And what if you use the same process, because we know the process already works for you, repeat it over and over at the same speed, etc., etc. So NLP is a way of getting the detail in people's thought processes and then helping to change, if they want to, either helping them to change those thought processes so they get a result that they want, or what you could do is, you could take my recipe for stage confidence and you could try that recipe on. I could teach you that recipe. I mean, we'd be better off using, maybe someone famous that you really admired already, but we could take someone else's process for confidence and you could try it on, and you might find without any tweaks that doing that gives you what you want. Anyway, that's I could probably spend about an hour talking about what NLP is and isn't, but that's a sort of an overview. It works, No,
that's good stuff, man. I'm sure we'll get a little bit more into that in a bit. First things first, as I usually like to start the show, going back in time a little bit and figuring out and finding where you got started, and a bit about the journey that's brought you to where you are today. And I guess that starts more as a musician, right?
100%. Yeah. So like a lot of people that do the kind of work that I did, my music making started off in school. It was, school music lessons. I had great music teachers at school. I was really lucky. I started off playing trumpet. I played trumpet and I was, I liked the idea of playing trumpet, but I don't think I must have not really enjoyed it that much, because as soon as I heard some people playing the drums, I was like, oh, that's amazing. And basically there was one particular, I grew up in the Northeast, and there was one particular teacher up in the Northeast called Jeff Hutchinson, who is, I can quite honestly say, he was way more than he still is way more than just a drum teacher to me. He was a mentor and all that kind of things. And Jeff, anyway, I had a few drum lessons with other teachers. It wasn't really, it wasn't quite right. And then I managed to get lessons, thanks Dad for lots of phone calls, with Jeff. And I can honestly say it changed my life at that point. So Jeff introduced me to, obviously got me on this sort of path to playing the drums and trying to do it really well. And he also, at the same time, it was Jeff that introduced me to these sort of personal development ideas. And it was through Jeff that I ended up reading my first books about, maybe taking charge of your brain a little bit. And then I think I read a book about NLP fairly early on and all this kind of stuff. So yeah, Jeff really started me off. So I did school music ensembles, really loved that. Did a lot of practice, like I was super focused on drums. I went to study jazz at Leeds College of Music and did the degree there. Met some great people, had a great time, learned a lot. Then coming out of Leeds College, I sort of was playing and teaching around Leeds, and that was a mixture. There was a lot of functions, as a lot of people do when they leave college. A lot of parties, some jazz gigs, some little restaurant type things as well. And then I went and I got a phone call to go and audition for P&O Cruises as a drummer. Now, I'd actually applied as soon as I finished college, it was something I really wanted to do to get experience. Pardon me, to get out of just playing with my peers and that kind of thing. And yeah, it took quite a long time, but eventually I get this phone call inviting me to audition for P&O, and did that. I was lucky that I got a gig, which I'm very grateful for. So I played drums for P&O initially in their what they call the orchestra, which is basically the theatre band. But I also did a few other gigs. Then I ended up a few years into that, I ended up band leading and then MDing, musical directing for P&O. And then I ended up actually as part of the recruitment team for musicians for P&O. So I was doing auditions and going through CVs, and that was quite a wild time. And it was around that time that I started noticing a few things missing, shall we say, in the thought processes of those around me. And I started going, why don't I do that? And it was because I'd thought about all this personal development stuff earlier on in my life, So that's when I started noticing, maybe if you like, a gap in the market was when I was working on cruise ships and things. Anyway, and then I sort of finished my time with P&O, and I moved to London, which had always been my plan. And when I got to London, initially I had no gigs, but then quickly enough, I picked up functions and I got back into playing a bit more jazz, and then some singers gigs. I ended up with a little resident gig for a while, which was great. And then I started getting into more and more into what I do mainly now on the music front, which is the theatre and the one night kind of tribute touring shows. Mm-hmm. And so that's the music side, and that's where I'm at now, and I love it. In terms of the coaching and the NLP type stuff, I'd kept studying it, and I had a few bits of sort of qualifications that I just wanted to do for my own interest. And one of those was what they call an NLP practitioner. But I was only really doing it because I was interested in it. I had no real plan to ever work with anyone else with it. I just knew it had helped me a lot, and I enjoyed it. Anyway, so I do this NLP practitioner thing in London, and it's training with one of the co-creators of the whole thing from the States. And I just had an amazing experience. And a couple of things happened during that week or 10 days or whatever it was, where at the end I just went, maybe there could be an avenue for me to do this kind of work as well somehow. And then I did the second qualification, which they call a master practitioner, and that was with June O'Driscoll and Jeff Rolls down at Thoughttitude. They're amazing. I'd met them at the London training with that co-creator guy. Incredible practitioners and trainers and teachers of mine. And yeah, it was about halfway through doing that second qualification, that master practitioner, I just went, I enjoyed working with the other people on that course so much. I went, this is something I really want to do. Friends of mine and people that I work with need this. And that's where it started. And I ended up, I ran some like group stress busting workshops for teachers. And then I've, in the last couple of years, I've sort of settled that actually it makes sense for me to work with entertainment people, because I love entertainment people. I always have. And, I think this stuff is really, really important and really helpful, and it's really missing for a lot of people. So, and then I also then did a coaching qualification finally when I realized that one-on-one was my favorite thing to do. And I think that bit of waffle brings you fully up to date on my life story there, Jack.
Sounds great, man. So I guess my first question is, what I know you've spoken entertainers and entertainment producers, but who are the people that you work with mainly on the coaching side of things?
So I describe them as live entertainment producers. And the reason that I say that is that it's anybody that is responsible for more than just their own performance, right? So okay. I would describe anybody that runs a function band, you're a live entertainment producer. If you're a solo tribute act, for example, you're a producer because you're also booking all your gigs and you're maybe selling tickets for some gigs, and maybe sometimes you're booking a band to work with as well, or a couple of dancers, or so typically it's those people that have like a level of responsibility or an enterprise that's bigger than just themselves. Now, on the other hand, I also work with other MDs or arrangers or occasionally other people that are mainly focused on just performing. And I do like to do that, but most of my promo, if you like, is aimed at those producers, people that have that sort of extra layer of responsibility beyond just them getting on stage.
Mm-hmm. So the next obvious question then is, I mean, we've touched on this already, that you're helping with like confidence and stuff like that, but do you help with business side of things as well? What is the main thing that you help them with?
Yeah. So most of the things I talk about in my social media, and that people then come to talk to me about, revolve around, often it's increasing their turnover, and what's behind that is more financial security. That's the thing that they want. The next thing on the list is usually, as you said in the introduction, the next thing on the list is usually the actual, if you like, the creative fulfillment side of the work. So better quality work. And yeah, that's tied into money as well, because for a lot of people, better quality work equals better pay. But it's not only that, it's also perhaps better conditions, more opportunity to create something new or something maybe a bit bigger than they have been doing before.
So is that kind of like helping people get out of their like closed-mindedness in a way, and expand in like the things that they think they can do?
That's absolutely part of it, Jack. Yeah. So with those two things, there is both an internal, like the personal, if you like, element of it, and then there is also, if you like, the external strategy and goal planning and all that kind of stuff, which I'll sort of get to in a second. But then the other thing is that often those people lack certainty about the future. People worry about the future because they don't have a plan for how they're going to grow their business, or what about retiring at some point? You know, what a crazy idea. So it's those three things. Oh, I'm sorry. And the other thing that comes up a lot actually for people is just the idea of having some kind of work-life balance. If not now, then soon, you know? That's a big deal because people just have this idea that they just have to work all the time. Anyway, so they're the main things that people come to. And and I suppose there's three main bits that people typically need to work on. And one, which we've chatted about before, is there's a bit of a mindset shift that needs to happen for most people, where for a lot of people, they need to move out of what you might call an employee mindset and into a business owner mindset. And it's very clear why lots of, for example, musicians or performers start out with more of an employee mindset. And that's because all of our training before we hit the professional world is designed to help us be good at fitting into someone else's plan, you know? So if you're a drummer, for example, this is obviously not universal, by the way. I'm not claiming that it's completely universal, but it's very common. You know, a lot of the words that you'll say to yourself when you're practicing and studying or whatever is you're trying to be versatile, you're trying to be professional, you're trying to be competent. And obviously all of those things are important. But that puts you squarely in this box of someone else is going to tell me what to do, and my job is just to be good at playing the drums. It's the same if you're a dancer, for example. Now, the problem is you as a drummer, or me as a drummer, sorry, let's say we do a few functions and we play in a few bands. What happens is after a couple of years, we start to notice a few things that we don't really like about the bands we're playing in. Maybe we don't think we're getting paid enough money. Maybe we don't think the conditions are good enough. You know, we've done too many gigs where we've shown up and we've been told there's going to be a hot meal and there's the plate of banzania that's been sat there for an hour in the corner, or it's, you know, some crusty cheese sandwiches or whatever. And we decide, oh no, actually, or maybe we just think the bands are not that good and the music's wrong. But so you decide to do your own thing and you launch into that, and it just turns out there's a lot of other skills and maybe beliefs and attitudes that you need to make a business success, a band a success, that are very different to just playing drums in someone else's band. And so a big part of what I do, even with people that have been quite successful for quite a long time now, they hit this sort of ceiling and they can't go any further above it. And it's because in the back of their mind is still this sort of employee kind of mindset. So a big part of what I do is helping people sort of make that transition, if you like. Now, some people make it in the first session, like completely. They just go, oh, I get it, and off they go. Some people, it's at the end of the year, they've made this huge change in how they see things and how they think. So yeah, I would say that's the thing that probably underlies most of what I do. And then the examples of that, the sort of the trickle down effects of that are the more strategic things, if you like, are it's amazing how many bands, producers, solo acts, entertainers don't have any kind of written down goals for their business this year. Right? It's remarkable to me. And it's incredible how many don't have an idea about what they want their life and their business to be like in 10 years. And it's not written down. And again, if you're a drummer and what you want is just to keep getting chosen by other people to play in someone's band, I can understand why you might not have those things. But if you're running a business where you're responsible, you really need some goals for your business. Because if you don't, nothing will happen. You'll just stay in the same place forever. So just the act of knowing how to create a real goal for your business and how to make a plan, how to respond when things go wrong, which they will, how to be flexible, when to stick to your guns, that kind of stuff. That's a big part of the work that I do with people. Actually, now I think about it, they're the main two things. And where I think whether or not anybody works with me, if people just did that themselves, things would really change for their businesses, just the act of having written goals and plans, and on this day at this time I'm going to do this, and I know it's done because X, Y. That's do you know what, that's the best description I can give of that right now.
Yeah, no, that's great, man. Goals, it's a big thing for me. I personally do like quarterly goals, so the first 3 months of the year, blah blah blah, and there'll be financial goals, there'll be like marketing goals, things that I want to set up in my business that I want to get going, all kind of things like that. And then I don't know if you listened to Monday's episode yet, but at the start of that I heard something great on another podcast recently which made me change the way I've been thinking about goals. And it was just to cut it short, this guy, he had set this goal that he was a wedding videographer, and he was like, if Oprah ever has a wedding videographer on her show, like what kind of person would that be? What kind of videographer would they be? And then, so that was, he had this huge, big, lofty dream, and then he kind of then figured out how to work backwards from that rather than setting forward goals, does that make sense? I don't know if I explained that very well, but so it's basically about thinking about the end goal instead of like your next step, and then working backwards from there. And I just thought that was really interesting, and it's made me think a lot about, for one, what my end goal is, because I hadn't really thought about that yet. And this is personal stuff and business stuff, not just business stuff. But yeah, I thought that was really interesting.
It is. So that is, and I would completely agree with that guy. So yeah, you have to. Well, I should stay away from have to words, because it's not really that you have to, but it is often a good idea to start with what I described earlier as the big vision, the 10-year thing. So for him, that videographer you were just talking about, for them, they said, well, the ultimate goal would be, if Oprah invited me on, and then you can say that, let's make that the vision, right? And then working back from that, well, okay, what kind of person would I need to be to have achieved that? What kinds of other things would I maybe have achieved before that? What has to happen for me to achieve those things? What do I have to do today to achieve those things?
Yeah,
that's great. Starting with the big vision is a really good idea. And it is, I think, it's the first thing that I do with someone if they come on board for a program. Because also that's really motivating, isn't it? The other advantage of, if I think about, or if I take myself back to before I was doing coaching things, when I was exclusively being a musician, if I think about what some of my, say, week-to-week goals were maybe not that exciting, but the year goal was motivating, and the 10-year goal was really motivating. So I completely agree. And hey, what a great image to have, the idea of walking on.
Yeah, and it wasn't necessarily that he actually did want to be on Oprah, and just FYI, he never did make it onto Oprah. But
well, not yet.
It was just about this, big, lofty vision that inspired him and pushed him to being the kind of videographer he wanted to be, I guess. But yeah, as I said, it just made me think about like what my end goals are for business and stuff like that. And I still don't really know, I don't think, but it's definitely opened up the thought for it.
Yeah, I really loved what you said about, you said not just business, but, also personal. And I think when you do a vision, that bigger goal, you want to make it, it's a slightly hippie sounding word, but it's the truth. You want to make it holistic. It should include all of the things that are important with your life, because what you don't want to do is make what you probably don't want to do is make your vision only focused on, say, your videography business, and then, get to like 55, have an incredible videography business, but have nothing else in your life. Like that isn't what you want. So it's a good idea when you're doing that, absolutely, to build in all the different aspects of your life, even if you're mainly focused on the work thing. So that was great. I agree with you, Jack.
So, I mean, I guess, do you have any quick advice on where to get started with goal setting? Like for anyone that hasn't got setting themselves any goals for maybe this year yet,
100%.
Where they should get started?
Yeah, great. Well, let's go with the thing that you said, because I think that's really good. So start with, don't necessarily start with this year. Start with something bigger. And the best advice about how to do this, but I would say, is you want to start coming up with these sorts of ideas with your brain in as relaxed and confident and positive a place as you can. I would say that's the biggest thing to get right when you do something like this. And you can imagine why that would be, I'm sure, but just to run through it, if you've just looked at your bank balance for your business and it's a bit low and you're in panic mode, if you then start trying to come up with goals and plans, you're going to really limit what is possible. You're going to dismiss an enormous amount of things that could go very well for you. You're going to really reduce your sights down, and you can end up, again, without trying to do an Oprah impression, you can end up building your goals out of fear, if you like. Mm-hmm. No good. So the first thing to do is go and have a walk, have a cup of tea, relax, put on your favorite album, chill out a little bit, or think through some times when you've done something really well, and just get a sense of optimism going. And then, ask yourself, well, if I could do something really spectacular over the next 10 years, what would I want? And you say, okay, what would my work look like? What would my friends and family life look like? What would my leisure time look like? Where would I be living? Just whatever questions kind of come up to yourself. And the important thing about this is, as you think about it, write it down. You've got to write it down. So just start. It's like you kind of daydreaming a little bit, and let your brain go and just go off and have some fun, and just accept the possibility that maybe you could do it, and write it down. And then you can say, well, what will be important to me on the journey to that 10-year goal? And that's what, in sort of coaching self-development circles, we call your values, So you might have, for example, my family is really important to me. So whatever I do towards my work goals and everything, it has to fit around looking after my family. So you write that down. And then you're saying, you know what? I only want to do gigs, for example, where everybody gets treated properly. You might write, that's a big one for me. So you write that down. And you will find other things. So for me, important words and values are things like personal integrity, which sort of fits in with that. Personal growth, to me, learning and my own personal sort of development is really important. So any goals that I make and decisions that I make are made through this frame of these values and the things that are important. So just come up with a few ideas. It doesn't have to be the complete list. It doesn't have to be correct even. You just move your brain in the direction of thinking about those kinds of things, And then you can say, well, okay, if I want to create that and that list of things is going to be important to me on the trip, what would have to happen before that vision arises in order to make it possible? And you write those down. And you don't have to know how you're going to do it. You just write them down. So, it could be, let's say you want to, you're running a wedding band and really what you want is you want to be, what would a common goal be? I don't know. Maybe you'd like to retire and just kind of have the bands run themselves a bit. I mean, you're still going to manage them, you're still going to be involved, but you don't want to be driving up and down the M6 every day, for a function. So you paint that picture and you say, okay, well, what would have to happen? Well, I suppose I'll have to have at least 3 teams of people that I really trust. I'll have to have developed the skills of one person in each team so they can talk to the clients. And anyway, you go through all that. Okay, that's your next level of goals. And then you go, okay, well, what could I do this year? What could I get done if I worked hard this year to give me a big step towards all of that? And I would call those things your strategic goals for the year. And once you've got those strategic goals for the year, you want to be careful how many of those you have, by the way. You want to make sure that it seems possible for you to do it, especially if you're doing it without support from a coach or someone, And most people pick 3 or 4 areas that they want to make as big goals for the year. That seems to be a good number for people. And once you've got that, you can just start making an actual plan. You can say, well, okay, let's say I want to increase my turnover by 15% this year, or I want to increase, let's see if you've got a financial security goal or something. Okay, let's say I want to increase my turnover by 15% this year. How could I do that? What would the steps be for that? Whose help do I need? What resources do I need? Who do I need to talk to do this? What don't I understand? Where can I find out that information, And the funny thing is, once you've done that, you've got these little steps, haven't you? And you can say, well, what am I doing towards my goal of financial security this week? Well, I'm going to go and talk to such and such at my accountants on Thursday, and they're going to explain to me about blah, 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 blah. I'm upping my prices. I'm figuring out how to up my prices a bit next week. And once I've upped my prices, I'm going to put all of that money into an emergency fund for a year. And do you see what I mean? Suddenly you can take something that seemed impossible the day before and go, actually, I just need to do this.
Yeah, great stuff, man. I love to, maybe this is slightly off topic as well, but with those goals, have things that I need to do that week and that day and that month or whatever, write them all in a list as well, and then tick them off. And you get this nice little buzz of when you tick things off of a to-do list. And that really helps you move forward and motivate you as well, I think.
Yeah. And, oh man, I love all this stuff so much, Jack. Thanks for bringing me on to talk about it. But, so the funny thing about that, just because you mentioned the NLP thing earlier, is what you've just told us is your strategy, if you like, your personal method for how to get tasks done, right? Now, the weird thing is, lots of people might hear that and go, I hate lists, right? Yeah. Now, that doesn't mean that, obviously, it doesn't mean that you're wrong. It doesn't mean that lists are wrong, and it doesn't mean that the person listening is wrong. What it is that all of these things about how motivation works are intensely personal. And that's why sometimes you perhaps have had this experience yourself where you've read a piece of advice and you've gone, oh, I should do that. And maybe you give it a go and it just doesn't work. And the reason is that all advice is more specifically tailored than we think it is, So even when I describe a process for goal setting, it's sort of intentionally slightly vague, because the details, what makes a particular goal really zing for someone, is so personal that you can't really give that out in advice. You have to kind of discover it for yourself or with a coach. And so your lists thing, for example, that I don't get any satisfaction from ticking things off a list, strangely. Like, it doesn't do anything.
Oh, right, okay.
Yeah. But who cares? The point is it works for you, so you should absolutely keep doing it. I remember I did a course, I did like a small business kind of marketing course about a year and a half ago, and which was really good. It was really interesting. The guys that run it are great. And they had this whole module on their course on like time management, which basically involved like a spreadsheet and time blocking and color coding and all the rest of it. And I went like, oh, wow, that seems quite impressive. That would make me feel like a real professional if I did that. So I started doing it, and I got less done, and I got more frustrated. And it's like, oh, I didn't have a problem with time management before. Why did I change? Do you know what I mean? So it's just the success or failure of some of these methods. How do I want to say that better? All of this stuff is about discovering what works for you to get a particular result. It's not necessarily about you doing it someone else's way, which again is why I love the coaching and the NLP stuff, because it's not consulting. It's not me saying to you, Jack, you should do it like this. It's me helping you figure out what will really work for you.
Yeah, I mean, that sort of perfectly brings the next question of if someone wants to get in touch with you, are you taking on clients at the minute? Like, how does that all work?
Yeah, so the best thing for people to do is I'm over on, we chatted first on either, I think it was Facebook or Instagram, but I do most of my work, as it were, marketing-wise, on Instagram, so they can find me there. I'm sure we'll put some links in.
Yeah.
And what I do is I have a Linktree link there where there's a quiz you can kind of jump on, and you can and I think that's mainly about the financial security piece, which people can go through. What I would really recommend is I also run these workshops once a month, which are free, which I'm calling the 3 Steps to Creative Freedom. And yeah, if people want to get a taste of maybe what working with me would be like, and some things that they can just do themselves that I think would really help, that's a good place. And if people have got something really juicy, I actually make space on a Tuesday just for kind of quick sort of chats and getting to know people and that kind of thing. So if you just drop me a message on Instagram, that's usually the best way to get in touch. Some people need what I'm offering and what I'm doing, and there's usually a way I can help. And if not, I'll happily tell you that, and I'll refer you to someone else. But yeah, I really love it, and I just love talking to people in music and entertainment. We all know, you know yourself from your videography work when you're working with bands, like the kind of sort of communication and banter and fun that you get in those environments is great. And I just really want to help people in this industry grow what they're doing so they can have a bit more fun and relax and all the rest of it. So thank you for all you're doing in that respect as well, because we all need, we all know the difference that having really high quality promotional materials makes for bands and for wedding bands and all that kinds of thing. And it's thank you for what you're doing with the podcast. It's great.
Oh, it's good fun, man. It's the best part about it is I get to speak to such interesting people, and I basically have had just a free coaching session. So,
well, we should have a chat all the time, Jack, for sure.
Yeah, man. So, I mean, just to other people who maybe have never considered any type of coaching before. I hired a business coach, maybe a slightly different business coach. That was very much you need to do this, and this is how you do it kind of coach for a year, and it changed my business, changed my life. So I definitely do recommend thinking about it if that is something you're interested in. But let's sort of change direction completely now. Go back to your career as a musician,
sure,
and talk about some of your gigs, some of the experiences you've had, your best gigs, your worst gigs, that kind of thing. Any cool stories you've got, a time to brag, stuff like that. What have you got for us?
I don't know if I've got anything to. I really like all the gigs that I currently do, and hopefully a lot of people can say that, but I really mean it. Like every single one of them these days is a pleasure. Like I love the people, I love the shows themselves. I don't have any naff gigs anymore.
Is that because you've made it that way, as in you've built it so that you only do the gigs that you want to do now, or is that just pure luck? Or
well, I don't know what you might have some good input on this sort of thing, Jack. And I think it's always a combination of those things.
Yeah.
Right. So yeah, I've always had goals for my gigs. Like I'm absolutely in a position now where that in the past I have had other goals that I've kind of worked through for other kinds of gigs, and I've turned out to be wrong. I've gone, actually, that's not what I want. I thought it was that, but actually it's this. So actually, I really enjoy all the things that I'm doing. I think it's I can't remember who I heard it from, but part of working towards any goal is probably going to involve increasing the likelihood that you get lucky, as it were, because you're going to do loads of work, and there are going to be some things that you're not going to be directly responsible for, but will be really helpful. So yeah, I would say that the position that I'm in now, music work-wise, it's a result of, yes, hard work and competence. It's also a result of not being a terrible person to be around on gigs. It's a result of happening to have met some of the right people on the right day when we were both in the right mood to have a good time. And then, of course, the gig also went really well. So I think it's always a mixture of luck and effort,
Yeah.
So yeah, best gigs. Yeah. So all of the things I do at the moment are great. Trying to think. I think I've heard you asking the sort of best gig, worst gig ever question on the pod before, so I have come slightly prepared. I would say my favorite gig memory these days is actually, I don't know whether you remember, there was a brief period during all of the lockdown stuff. There was this weird period over one sort of Christmas-ish where there was about 3 weeks where we could suddenly go and do gigs. And I don't remember how it arose or why, but there was this very strange thing, and I ended up getting booked on a gig by a really good friend of mine, a former housemate, in fact, to go and do like a Sinatra kind of swing thing at a venue called the Boysdale in Canary Wharf, which is a lovely restaurant and a great venue. They got decent house gear and all that kind of thing. Anyway, the band on that gig was sort of, for me, the sort of quintessential band for that singer. And yes, the gig was great, but I can still hear like the laughter that we had, because none of us had seen each other for so long, for months and months and months. None of us had played a gig. I just remember the relief being sat having the lunch in the back room, the band room, before we did the gig. I just remember that how incredible it felt to be laughing that hard with other people in person, and then for that energy to transfer onto the stage. And of course, everybody plays really well, like that's a given, but also to have all of that fun as well. So that really sticks in my mind as kind of best gig ever. Oh man, worst gig ever. Do you know what? It's probably, because I had a few written down for this, it's probably worst gig ever, going on stage at a theatre to do and there's never rehearsals for any of these things, it's all kind of reading gigs, so you have to just be able to, you just got to be able to do it, And so going on stage to do a theatre show, which I'd sort of supposedly joined full time now for the first gig. And the previous drummer to me had also been the MD, so did all the count-ins and ran the show. And of course, now someone else had taken over as MD, and I was just playing the drums. Anyway, we walk in, the musical director counts in the first song, and before he's even finished the count-in, the bass player stood right next to me, who was also the producer of the show, went, "Too slow!" And I'm like, what? So, and I haven't even heard the whole count-in, so I barely know what speed it was supposed to be at. So we start playing, and the bass player keeps going, too slow, pull it back. So I sort of pull it back, and as I pull it back, the MD looks at me like I'm an idiot, and then the guitar player turns around and goes like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, ah. Anyway, this went on for the whole of the first half. It was horrible, man. It was absolutely horrible. And I just, I basically sat everyone down in the dressing room in the interval and went, "I don't mind if I don't do any more of these gigs, but that can't happen again, can it?" and bless them, actually, everybody agreed how ridiculous it was. Like, they were all super. As soon as we sat down and talked about it, everyone just went, "Oh, that was stupid. Sorry," And then weirdly, I've ended up staying with that show for years, and the whole thing completely changed. But that first half of that gig was probably the worst I've ever felt playing the drums in my life. It was horrendous. Does that satisfy the work?
That's good stuff, man. I feel a little bit stressed after listening to it.
Yeah, I'm going to have to go and have a little walk as well, actually. Well, and then we've all got the same, you probably have it yourself from, working with wedding bands and stuff. There's all the usual stories about, I don't do that many functions these days, but one of the last ones I did a couple of summers ago, was the classic thing where we all showed up at like 2:00 to set up. It was like a 9-piece band, there's 3 singers and it's huge, big PA, all the rest of it. I think there's a couple of crew even. Get there at 2, set up, sound check, kind of hang around for 5 hours, then do the first set at 8:30. And then after the first set, we're supposed to get fed. And it's in the middle of nowhere. There's no other food around, And the band leader goes and sort of reminds the catering team that this has all been arranged. And they're like, "Oh, yeah, no problem." And then this sort of waitress comes and sort of walks us up to the upstairs room, where in this room and there's 9 of us, and we've all been there all day. And there's a tiny little sort of 10-inch basket of 4 slices of pizza on this table in the middle of the thing. And I just went, "There you go." So, yeah. But everybody, I think, goes through that kind of thing,
Absolutely. So, what's next for you? What have you got coming up? Is the coaching thing taking over the musician thing? Do you always plan to keep both side by side? What have you got coming up for the future, man?
So my plan has always been, and I really can't imagine this changing. I always want to do both because I love both. They work really well hand in hand. Ultimately what I'm doing is what I could have done 10 years ago is I could have taken these like various skills I was developing, and I could have said, I'm going to set up my own production company or my own wedding band, and I'm going to run it the way I want to do it. I've got all these skills. I understand all this stuff. Can communicate with different kinds of people. I could have set up my own band or my own show. And if I'd done that, it would have ticked a lot, if you like, it ticked a lot of boxes for me. But I could only ever have actually helped the people that was effectively working with or for me. Yeah. Mm-hmm. But let's say maximum of 10 people. Whereas doing what I'm doing now, I think as an industry, we can just raise the tide and thus all of the boats on the water, We can raise the standard for everybody. And this is the coaching is the best way for me to help raise the thing up, the level up for everybody. And obviously, it's not about me doing it on my own, but if I help 10 producers this year or 10 band leaders, and they can all increase the fees for their 5 or 6 bandmates or show team, suddenly I've helped, what's that, 60 people effectively this year rather than 6. So that's where I'm at. The drumming stuff was always my first passion, gigs. Like I say, I love the work that I'm currently doing, so my diary's pretty booked for the year. Gig-wise, I don't I think I've got my usual sort of lull period is kind of August, but maybe I'll just have a holiday, that's probably a pretty good plan.
Yeah.
So next for me is just to keep doing exactly what I'm doing. And unless something really out of the ordinary happens, that's probably what I'm going to keep doing.
Yeah, nice, man. So I've got one last question. It might seem a bit random now, but I was listening to a podcast this morning and I thought it was a great question, so I wanted to ask you. But what have you learned in the last 3 months that you wish you knew 3 years ago?
Oh, yeah, you did mention that. That's great. Okay. The last 3 months that I wish I knew 3 years ago. I would say, and again, I just want to caveat this with, this is not advice. This is what has been true for me. I just want to make that very clear. So for me, I'm sure it would be true for other people as well. The positive effect of more deep rest during the day, I've always meditated. I've always done one a day. The incredible effect for me of doing 2 brief meditations or rest periods, whatever you want to call it, of really focused rest has an unbelievable positive effect on not only my productivity, but just my level of energy and excitement during the day. For me, that is probably the biggest thing. And you know what? I knew it 10 years ago, but I didn't do it. So something has happened in the last 3 months where I've realized just how important that is. And if anyone out there is, running their own enterprise, the band or whatever it is, if you're not programming in time during your day to properly chill out, that's not watching Netflix, it's not scrolling on your phone, it's like real rest. If you're not doing something like that, I suppose this is advice, it's definitely worth trying and just see what effect it has on you. Creatively as well. I can encounter a problem and wrestle with it for like an hour and think that I'm really doing the work and get a bit frustrated and all the rest of it. And then I can go and chill out for 10 minutes and meditate, and that's the answer. It's done. Now,
that's good stuff, man.
And of course, if my ego had a bit less control, I could have done that an hour earlier, right? But no, I wanted to fight with it and figure it out with my brain, But actually, the power of just, and that's not the same thing as being lazy, it's the power of looking after yourself and taking the pressure off every now and then and just saying, is this the best feeling to have in my brain, as it were, to solve this problem? There you go.
Yeah, just to carry that on a little bit with myself and I imagine a lot of people listening, because we're all sort of self-employed, we don't really have strict schedules and stuff, making sure you have days off is super important, and making sure that you try and schedule that in. That's something that I haven't always done and I'm trying to work on more, but it really helps with my productivity, with getting inspired again. And just got to look after yourselves.
Totally. Can I appreciate we're probably running out of time, but
no, you're good.
Give you a little mini anecdote about that. I mentioned I did that marketing course, that sort of small business marketing course a year and a half or a couple of years ago. In one of the first meetings of we sat down and on this kind of group call, and the guy running it said, well, obviously everyone's already got their holidays booked out for this year. And I went, what? What do you mean? And the short version is everybody else in this group, the first thing they did in their diaries every year was book out when they wanted their free time to be. And then they built their work around that. And of course, that's absolutely the right way to do it, because otherwise you'll never get 2 weeks where you haven't got something on, Yeah. So being able to get over that fear of, but what if a really good gig comes in? It's like, it's not. Okay, cool. If Sting calls, cancel your holiday. But if not, probably just go on holiday, There are no gigs so good, apart from perhaps Sting or Wynton Marsalis or something, or where you should cancel your holiday. Like, especially if you're not a single person. Like, if you're a single person, sure, do whatever. But, if you've got a few responsibilities beyond just your own interests, and a few other things in your life that you care about beyond just the work, then yeah, get the holidays booked in, set your week up in a way that you can enjoy it. Like, I know we mentioned this in a previous, I really like that analogy of the goose that lays the golden eggs, which is that idea that you are, especially if you're a sort of solopreneur in entertainment, if it's just you running things, you create all of the magic and the success in your business, right? So you lay the golden eggs. You are also the manager of the person who creates all of the success in the business, you know? So you've got to be both the person generating all the good stuff and the person looking after that person. So yeah, don't flog yourself to death. You want to set up your week in such a way that, yeah, you feel like, well, for me, you need to know what you want to feel like during the week. So for me, I want to feel like I'm making progress and growing and things are moving forward. So I set up my week in such a fashion. I also want to get plenty of rest. I also want to be able to treat my family and my friends really well. I want to be able to spend time with my partner. I want to be able to practice the drums a little bit, you know, so that I'm match fit for gigs because I want to enjoy the gigs. So yeah, setting up your year, your month, your week, and every day so that you can actually enjoy it as well as get the work done. Because if you're not enjoying it, you won't get the work done to the same standard or even the same, a word I hate, efficiency, than if you were enjoying it. So yeah, again, that comes back to those values things, right, that we talked about towards the start. You have to know what is important to you if you're going to design a week that works for you. So yeah, there we go.
That's great, man. This has been perfect. There's so much good advice in this episode. I should have said at the start, you should grab a pen and a pad and write some of this stuff down. But awesome, man. So I know we did mention it earlier, but just to remind people, if they want to find out more about you or connect with you or chat with you, where are we going to send them? Again, I will put the links in the show notes. But
yeah, so if people go to my Instagram, which is, for some reason that's escaped my brain, but it's at Coach John Blackburn, sort of all one word. I'm sure it'll be in the notes. And from there, there's a link tree in the bio, which has got, you know, the quiz that I talked about. It's got my website, you know, like everyone's got. If you're on LinkedIn, you know, if you're running things, I'm also on LinkedIn at Coach-John-Blackburn. Again, I'm sure we'll put it in the notes. And yeah, the best thing to do is just say hi. Like, drop me a message. Like I say, I do those Tuesday chats. I think they're a bit booked up for, they might be a bit booked up for the next couple of weeks, but we'll find a slot. And, you know, that's no charge. I love talking to people. I love hearing about what they're up to. You don't have to have a sales pitch in the conversation. We can just have a chat. Yeah, so I'd love to hear from people. I'd love to talk to people. If I can help people just in that 45-minute chat, if they can go away with something that means they can, you know, raise their game a bit, that's exciting for me. And sure, if people want to do some work, if they've got specific goals, if they want to raise their income, if they want to do better quality work, if they want to have a bit more balance in their life and certainty about the future, let's have a chat.
Awesome. Perfect, man. Again, it's been an absolute blast chatting to you. I think there's probably so many other subjects that we could chat about as well. So I think if you're up for it, I'd definitely love to have you on again.
Jack, I would love to have another chat. Yeah, I've got the sort of list that we made, and there's still loads of red unanswered things on my page. So let's do it sometime.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Yeah, perfect. Cheers. Thanks again, man. It's been a blast.
Cheers, Jack. Bye-bye.
So there we go. I told you that was going to be a good one. I just want to say thanks to John again for coming on. I'm 100% sure he'll be back for another episode in the not so distant future. So I've had a couple of really nice reviews this week, but I'm super greedy and I would love some more. So if you're liking this podcast, if you're getting something from it, please could you leave me a review, ideally on the Apple podcast store thing. Also, if you'd like to be a guest on the show, if you've got some knowledge or a subject that you think people should hear about, then please get in touch. You can do that by emailing me at feedback@thefulltimefunctionmusicianpodcast.co.uk. That's an awful email address that so many people seem to be getting wrong. So otherwise you can just message me on Instagram or on Facebook. That's easier. Instagram is In Focus Recording Co. Facebook is my name, Jack Twiner. Lastly, if you would like to connect with like-minded people in a safe community, then please come join our Facebook group. Just search the Full-Time Function Musician Community on Facebook and you should find us. Anyway, that's enough from me. Take it easy. Catch you next week for episode 15.